but
Oh
there,
no.
the
Yeah.
opportunities of things available are just so much more in Pittsburgh.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I
You know what I
mean,
mean? There's a lot of good teachers up here. I can't complain. They had some nice teachers here.
yeah.
You know,
Lisa, whenever she graduated from Mohawk, really didn't have very many complaints about the school district or the teachers or anything like that. Um, seeing Nick, um, I was pretty much the same way. I was really hard for me to complain about uh, any of the teachers or the education that he got. So, I mean, the quality of the school this system and the school district is definitely there. It's just everything that goes along with it that's the problem.
yeah, it's it too.
Because he got a better education than he could have gotten, if he'd have followed my path and went to the city schools and yeah, he got a far better education than I would have
Yeah,
gotten.
there's too many distractions there.
It's a lot of things. It's not just distractions,
Yeah.
but uh, it we complain a lot about the nepotism at Mohawk, right? And there is. Well, it's North Beaver Township. You're either in the right clique or you're not, or you're out. It's that simple. But in town, I mean, they pass nepotism down from generation to generation. It's not even a practice; it's a way of life. And whenever there's no accountability for anything, these people just don't care.
Oh, they did not talk about nepotism. They make Trump look like he vets people.
Yeah, that's the truth. And I know for a fact there are people who have ran for the school board, and some of them actually got in just so they could hire somebody. That was it, because they were the only people that were in a position to be able to run for this position, and somebody had a kid or themselves who wanted in, so they backed them to run.
Hmm.
And that's not exactly ancient history.
No,
That's
no, it's not. No,
it's
it's
it's it's
not.
it's pretty recent. It's been within. Well, I'll be kind and say it's been within Nick's lifetime, and he's 19.
Yeah.
You know. Uh, Yesterday after we got done, you had three or four things that you wanted to talk about that we probably should have talked about yesterday. Uh, but as usual, we went off on a tangent. One of the big ones was the oil price, the price of oil.
And you know what? I was looking at that, and it's like it hit me after, but you know how we get sidetracked, where oil's actually gone down to $1 negative. June futures right now on a barrel of oil are about $11.91. U.S. oil is below $1, and I think the benchmark for the world oil is about 690. And one of the reasons that price dropped that low is there's so much more output than there is demand. But the issue is there's nowhere for the companies to store it. So the price actually goes that low purposely. So people maybe that own empty railroad cars or ships put it in one of those ships for storage for future use, hoping that, okay, when things start letting loose, if they're buying it at like negative 50 cents or whatever it might be, the oil companies are actually using that as long-term storage. And maybe when the price goes to, even if it goes to $10, the people with the ships are going to make money. You put what, a million barrels on some of those ships? I don't even
Oh
know.
yeah, oh yeah. You
I
get those
mean,
big tankers. Oh yeah.
a standard railroad car holds, uh, let's say, 32,000 gallons of
Okay.
oil. So,
Yeah.
which comes out to, I don't know, what is that, about 8,000 barrels? Is that how they figure it? Or 800 barrels?
Eight hundred barrels.
800 barrels. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that people that own those railroad cars, which the railroad doesn't own hardly any of their own cars, they're all leased.
Right.
But, so, they make $10 a barrel on every one of them. and it's only a 3-month hold, I mean, that's more than they probably made on than the railroad pulling them around somewhere. So,
Yeah.
but that was one of the things today. And the funny part of that was when the price started dropping below 30, Trump decided to shore up the national oil reserve. So he filled it full at $30 a barrel. He would have waited a month. He could have filled it at zero.
Well, there you go. That's the art of the deal right there, man.
Part of the deal.
That's the art of the deal.
Now you know why he put 4 casinos under.
And an airline and a steak. How the hell in this country? How the hell do you bankrupt a steak company? Right?
Yeah, I don't know.
How the hell do you do it? What else was there? Oh, there was didn't he have he had some sort of liquor. I forgot what it was.
Oh, it was Trump vodka.
Vodka. That's it. Trump vodka. Yeah. Yeah. That got shot to hell too.
It probably tasted like kerosene anyhow.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I promise you, as bad as it was, at one point in our lives, you and I would have drunk worse.
You're right.
We would have.
Another funny thing today, speaking of him, was Governor Larry Hogan put like a backhanded tweet against Trump up today. He said, "I'd like to thank the CDC," and I forget who else he mentioned, for providing the laboratories for the COVID-19 testing for the 500,000 kits I bought from South Korea.
Did you see that response? Which was, boy, did he waste money? All he had to do was get a hold of Mike Pence, and he'd have had all those.
Yeah, right.
And I'm thinking, wait a minute. The states have to ask you for these things. Why are you not asking the states, hey, how many do you need?
How many do you need? Exactly. And that was the point of Nancy Pelosi talking to Chris Wallace on Fox Sunday. So, of course, she's dumb for saying he's not a leader. Well, that's the whole point. That's what the federal government's for.
Yeah.
Then you also had a bipartisan, what was it, Senate committee today? Did you see this?
No,
They said, yeah, Putin and Russia influenced the election to help elect Trump. So I'm sure he's going to rant about that later too when he gets on.
So we're still going back and forth about that. It's like,
yeah,
everybody who has any way of investigating this thing or getting any kind of information have all said the same thing. Not one institution, not one anything, not one any body has said that the Russians did not interfere.
Right.
Except Trump.
Yeah. And the other thing that's coming out now too, because we've been distracted with the coronavirus, is I don't know if you remembered, about a month, or it might have been 2 months ago now, losing track of time. What the heck was that? The National Security Advisor. Was it McGuire?
The current one or the previous one?
Previous, not the current.
Who was the previous National Security Advisor? We're both drawing blanks.
But he was pretty much fired because he was already warning that Russia's already interfering in a 2020.
Oh, yeah.
And passing the information on to Congress.
Yeah.
Well, the current one, from what Congress is saying, Adam Schiff, is we're no longer getting information because they won't give it to us.
Right.
From the intelligence agencies.
Right. So this shit's starting already.
Yeah.
So this shit's starting already.
Right. And this guy that's in charge refuses to pass anything now to Congress and the intelligence committees.
So now it's just a matter of time now before that next third party candidate comes around.
Exactly. Who's it going to be? Who would draw off the vote off of the Democrats right now?
Yeah, makes you wonder who the could it be Tulsi?
You know what? I'm thinking it might not be, but they need. The thing is, if they go, if it's somebody too centrist, they could draw off a Trump at this stage of the game.
Yeah. So they're going to have to find somebody who is the next Bernie, or along those lines, the Bernie Elizabeth Warren type, who's far enough out to the left that that's what that's the only place that they're going to start pulling from. It's got to be. And anything closer to the center gets rid of starts taking votes away from Trump. So it has to be somebody that's out there.
Because there's a lot of moderate Republicans, and the little thing Lisa just sent over was I had seen that earlier today on about the age group and the boomers.
Yeah,
so like an 8-point swing from Trump to Biden now. And I'm sure that has to do with a lot of the, let the elders die to sacrifice for the economy.
Since mid-March, support for Trump's handling of the coronavirus. Oh, geez, this thing's still loading. It blew right past me. Has where the hell did it go? Oh, here it is. Since mid-March, support for Trump's handling of the coronavirus outbreak among 65 and over voters has dropped 20 points and is now lower than any age group other than the 18 to 29-year-olds. So the 18 to 29-year-olds, and we had said it, Lou. Well, the three of us on Mind of Master Grants on Mastering the News. Dye was on with us. Dr. Dye was on with us, and the three of us all came to the same agreement that, and there's Dr. Dye right there, who all said the same thing, which was, was that age group that's capable of seeing through the bullshit.
Right.
And
I hope they keep seeing through it.
I think it's something that's just inherent to everything that they do, and they're just like their world. So I don't see it. I don't see that changing anytime soon.
You got to figure that age group they've seen 2 crashes now and a war, basically.
That's all they've known is war.
That's all they've seen.
Yeah, Nick has no idea what the world was like pre 9/11. No idea. For his entire lifetime, we have been at war. Was Kevin's too?
Yeah, Kevin's too. Wow.
Yeah. Think about that.
I guess for anybody born after 1997, right?
And they are both on the well, Kevin more so is sort of on the low end of that generation, age-wise, right? That's all they've seen. That's all they know. They don't know what it's like to not have people die in the Middle East.
Wow. That's a way to enter the conversation, isn't it? So are you guys talking about support falling amongst people in that younger age group? Is that what it's about?
Yeah. Did you see the little thing? What actually it actually opens up to a pretty good article that Lisa posted. Trump handling of the COVID-19 pandemic plummets 20 points among those 65 and older.
Oh, good. Okay. Yep, I'm there now.
Yeah. And his if I read it right, it was they're just talking about his approval rating as far as the pandemic is concerned. I don't think it's his overall, or am I not reading this correctly?
Because I think I saw something earlier today where he won that age group by 8 points.
Well, it says support of Trump's handling of the coronavirus outbreak has dropped 20 points. So there you go.
Yeah, I think, and again, I think those things will move in tandem, though, if we're saying those are two separate things, right? Support for Trump and support for his handling of the outbreak. I think those things will move in tandem as time moves on, right? This is Trump's plague. Like, it's going to define his presidency, whether he wants it to or not. The impeachment's going to be like more of a footnote, which is ironic and weird.
Yeah.
Because we spent 3 years, you know, with all this evidence of like just complete, you know, mishandling and treason, and now we're going to really talk about the Trump presidency in terms of coronavirus. So
Yeah. Well, you know, everybody keeps saying about how odd or weird or everything this is, or it's just so different. And I keep saying it's only different as far as as history is concerned, right? This is actually the new normal now. This is what we have now. We really can't compare it to things in the past because things have shifted so much.
Something you said yesterday, and you've said a number of times, you didn't scroll all the way down to Rick Wilson's tweet, did you? Did you happen to
I'm
look?
sorry, no, I did not. I'm sorry, I didn't.
I got about
Ah, yeah,
82 things up. Old people vote.
yep. Old
As
people
I've
vote.
beaten the drum forever, old people vote.
Yeah, yeah, and we said that yesterday, right?
Yesterday,
The
you said that.
the reason we have a presumptive Democratic nominee so early. Old people vote, young people don't.
yeah, yeah, let's not go there today.
Well, it's not anything but, you know, that's how it panned out.
Oh my. Yeah, and it's kind of interesting. Like, young people have literally the most at stake, right? Their whole working lives are ahead of them. Their economic futures are in front of them. Like, everything that matters is standing before them. So it really matters how elections go down, because it's they who will be impacted by the long-term effects of these policies, more so than people who are retired and have made their money and done their thing. So it's very interesting to me that the voting is almost exactly the opposite of what it needs to be to produce good outcomes for them, and that they're not really caring. And when they do, I mean, half of them get in on the crazy side. So do we really want them voting?
Yeah,
I'm here.
yeah, we do. Yeah, yes,
Yeah,
we
most
do.
of them. I mean, if they're going to vote smartly, and I don't just mean for Democrats, I mean for smart people with smart policies, right? It used to be that those people came from both parties, not as much anymore, but still, you know, like, we want them participating, we want them in the political process. But yesterday, when I was out for my run, two young guys standing on the corner, and there is one like main corner in my small little town, you know, dystopia. And yours is Mayberry, mine's dystopia. We can get more to that later. But here in dystopia, as I ran around town, right on at the beginning of the 3rd mile of my run, here are these two guys at the main corner in town, and they're younger guys. And by younger, again, I must qualify that. I mean people who look to be under 35 or under, right?
Okay.
And you know, one of them is doing some street preaching, which I'd have no problem with, but they're both holding signs, you know, to reopen America as if it is closed to them. And whoa, I had a breakdown there in my run. I started yelling, you know, pejoratives at them. And I mean, I just was like in a brawl, you know, like within 2 seconds of coming upon them, because I realized what they were doing. And then I just sort of ran away, you know, because I was on a run anyway. But that's what's going on in my town. Like, they're the only other two people I saw out in one stationary place, and that's what they're doing with their time. So when we say we want them to vote, I think maybe we think twice.
Well, there's that percentage in a group no matter what. Hopefully, it's a smaller percentage than what's in mine or your age group that got Trump elected. That's the whole thing.
Well,
So
what got Trump elected? A 1% vote flip in 3 different states, right? 1%
Yeah, pretty
of
much.
the vote.
70,000 votes total.
Those are the minds we need. We need about, and I would say we need 100,000 or so to be safe. We need to flip them back over. And maybe this story is the start of that. Maybe this article that you're pointing out is the start of it.
Yeah, I think, oh, I don't know if it's the start of it. I think it's a reflection of a lot of things though, right? Um, I think that the people are very shallow whenever it comes to their voting preferences though, because right now, today, Tuesday, April 21st, 2020, there's that 20-point swing. These people are pissed off at them. How pissed off are these same people going to be come November? Right, 7 months from now, whenever this thing, God willing, is past us, and their lives are starting to get back to normal, and all of a sudden, they're back to looking at us and those people and those circles that we run in and everything as the other again. How
Do you
much?
think it will just bounce back there?
I don't know. That's literally what I'm asking you. That's literally my question. Do you think it will?
I'd say it's going to swing back some depending on the outcome. To some of the ones that are diehards, but it's not I can't see it being. I think it's going to swing back toward 10, depending if they keep pounding the message from now till then.
Who, if the Democrats keep pounding the message?
Democrats, just as a reminder, and play the stuff off Fox News that said that old people are going to die anyhow. What's 2 or 3%? Or actually, the death rate in people over 65 is more like what, 8 or 9%?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's big.
So,
yeah. You combine that with that brain surgeon, Dr. Oz, who decided that 2 or 3% of the kids going to elementary school, we can afford to lose them too.
Exactly.
Which would be what, their grandkids or their great grandkids?
Yeah.
Right.
That's sick.
Isn't it?
That's sick. I mean, but even now they're deciding which people are expendable. When they say they want to open up, notice they're saying all of the service businesses with the lowest paying jobs need to open for their convenience so they can go get a haircut or get their nails done or whatever, or shop in a store, right? Those are the things that you hear them saying, to be fair.
And who typically mans those jobs?
The lowest paid workers. That's my point.
Yeah. And what demographic are normally the lowest paid workers?
Minorities,
immigrants, the least educated among us, or people who are brave enough to come here from another country and try to start a little business and have a restaurant or something. I mean, that's my family. That's my story. Yep. I mean, and I worked in that restaurant, until I was smart enough to work for somebody else's family who started the
restaurant. And also, did you see, she brought it up, immigration. He's ready to sign an executive order to suspend immigration right now as an excuse.
Well, it's already suspended, for fuck's sake.
Is it? I thought it was, he was signing something to, I forget how long it's supposed to go.
Yeah, I don't get that one, because as soon as this pandemic broke out, all the immigration, all the borders were closed anyhow.
Well, I don't know. I saw something going across today.
The other part that gets me, I'll ask you guys this question, the same one I asked my wife a little bit ago. Where was the first case in the U.S.?
On the East Coast.
Kirkland, Washington.
Kirkland, Washington. Who was it? Just the demographic. I don't know. You don't know the name.
I thought it was just some white guy.
Some white guy from where?
I can't remember.
From the U.S. It was an American.
American, yeah.
Yeah. So are you going to close your borders to the Americans? I mean, it just makes sense. If the reason you're closing your borders is this pandemic, this virus, well, it got here because some American decided to come home.
From Spain.
Yeah, well, yeah, wherever the hell he came from Spain.
I think so. I think that's the story.
You know what? I'm blaming Frank then, because he was in Spain.
Spain's a good place, man. It's not about Spain. The borders have not really been closed. It's just been harder to get in, and they're asking people to self-quarantine. Now the borders are closed. So Frank, you're right. Not Frank, I'm sorry, Lou. You're right. I'm getting all my
Okay.
podcasters messed up.
I know, because there's so many of us.
Yeah, in this meeting. That's okay. I'm new to cosmetics too. Look at me wiping all my lipstick off. I tried to put on lipstick and like I did a 4-year-old's job of it because I haven't been doing it lately. So are you sure you want me to come to these things?
Well, you know.
And I haven't even been drinking. I'm sober.
I know. That's killing me too.
Working
Trust me.
me.
I know. Trust me, it's
But,
killing me. And you know, I've cut down a lot because I'm not working this damn hard to start drinking, hitting some alcohol in me and killing everything that I just busted my nuts doing. So yeah, no, I'm slowing down quite a bit. You know?
Oh my God. I'm already kind of at an old person's kind of slow with it. You know, it's just like if I remember to drink, which is like the hard part, it's like, oh, I remembered. Like if we have the Sunday podcast, right, there's a beer moment in there. So
Yeah.
I remember to drink, but otherwise,
That's it.
It's too late at night by the time I remember. I'm like, oh, we had a fire. We were sitting here. We could have been drinking, you know. But I don't know. I hope the old people can see through, you know, the shenanigans. Here's the deal. This is the United States of America. We used to be on par with Germany in manufacturing. Okay, we used to be like right there, neck and neck with them. Now we can't even make PPE and masks and face masks and tests that would allow you to get a result in 15 minutes or a half hour so that the country can function. If we had those 3 things, the country could function. It would be a new normal, but we'd be functioning.
Right. And you know, Lou kind of touched on it whenever he was talking about how maybe, you know, half of those 20 points are going to swing back to Trump. Eventually we will get back to some sense of normalcy, right? The pendulum's going to swing back to the center in a however far it goes. It's going to get there. It's going to get somewhere to where it was. I find it hard to believe that we're ever going to get completely 100% back to where we were before this. I mean, we may eventually get rid of this virus or immunize for it or figure out how to treat it or whatever the case may be. We'll be able to handle it in some case. But I think how society has changed and is changing, the things that we're doing and Lou, we talked about it, what, a couple days, maybe a week ago, how this idea of something simple like telecommuting or working from home, how it's become more of a norm now in little communities like ours than it was. I mean, like, you know, in bigger communities, the LAs, New Yorks of the world, that happens a lot. It's very common, but someplace like Mayberry and, you know, whatever, what did you call your corner?
Dystopia.
Yeah. Yeah. That's not only a foreign concept, it was a very untrusting concept, right? Because these folks didn't trust people working from home. Now they don't have a choice for a lot of these folks. I mean, the ones that are capable of staying open, that have the ability to, and they're seeing that, hey, in a lot of cases, the productivity goes up. So things like that are going to stick, and that's God willing, right? Things like that, I think, are going to stick, or at least become a bigger option for folks. And that things like that, I'm just using that as an example, are things and how our society is going to change after we're through this whole thing.
You know, something you have to think about too, they want people to reopen. Or business owners, small business owners sitting there thinking, you know what, if I reopen, am I going to cause issues for my employees? And then I'm running full overhead again with employees. Is it going to be worse to open than to stay closed and try and suck up the small business loans if you're eligible for that? I mean, are you better off leaving it shut down instead of, opening and only gaining 20% of your original business. Because just because you open doesn't mean Lou, Patsy, and Diane are going to go out for a dinner here tonight, because we're going to think there's going to be germ-ridden idiots out there. This isn't over.
Like you read my mind.
Yeah, and then you're also going to get to this idea that maybe I'm better off and I'm trying to give you the other side of the coin, maybe, if I'm only going to get back 20% or whatever it is, because I don't know what other companies are like. I know, like, for the one I work at is like, boy, they have models that are predicting everything, right? I mean, they project everything like crazy. And for the most part, they're pretty accurate. I'll give them credit. They are pretty accurate. But if you're looking at something as a business owner where you're saying, okay, I can bring it back, but I'm only going to bring it back and I'm going to top at 20% of where I was, am I not better off just letting it die and opening something else, starting something else over? Because you're still an entrepreneur, right? You still have that drive and that desire to have your own business, to do your own thing. Is it something where you're just going to say, you know what, screw this, let it die. I'll suck out as much as I can from this. I'll leech as much as I can out of this, and I'll start something else.
Could happen. You can still do the PPE loans if you can get them. Notice how Trump directed a lot of that funding, though, to red states, like where they don't have a big concentration of small businesses versus, say, like New York or DC or Massachusetts or Pennsylvania, where we have all small restaurants and very tightly, coordinated things. I think in some lines, Patsy, what you're saying will happen. Like some businesses that were floating close to the line before this happened may decide to do what you described. But if you're pretty deep in, you're pretty deep in, right? You got to work with your creditors. You got to hope you can reopen. But to Lou's point, I don't think they're thinking about their employees or their customers or the bad press it would give if they do open and people go there and they get sick. Yeah. In a small town like Dystopiaville, oh my God, that will get around really quick on the Facebook. That will be on the interwebs everywhere. People start getting sick in Dystopia. And they'll be bad mouthing the business owner who fought to open.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
There could be
along
blowback.
With the mayor of Dystopiaville.
Oh man!
Oh, I was waiting for somebody to start that. I figured I kind of skirted through on the vote thing. I wasn't about to touch the mayor. I was hoping Lou did something.
I figured this segue was about right.
Oh my God!
So the mayor, you're good. You're really good.
That was a great. So the mayor, just for a little background, the mayor of Dystopiaville has been doing lots of crazy things lately. He declared our town of 3,000 mostly elderly snowbird people a sanctuary city for Second Amendment rights, which nobody up here was threatening anybody's Second Amendment rights. So we were pretty safe already in Dystopiaville with the guns. That was all going pretty well. And then 2 days ago, he and another prominent business owner from Dystopiaville, someone we supported because he brought a great business to the community, they went out to Harrisburg, because Dystopiaville is in Pennsylvania, and they went out to Harrisburg and protested to reopen America without really thinking through the implications. You guys are more optimistic than me. You think maybe in the fall this is going to be a memory and we're going to have to remind people of it in the ads and whatnot. I think in the fall we're going to be wrestling with round two. Ooh. And the mental and psychological and financial stress is going to be to here by the time we get to that point in the fall. And I think this epidemic will belong to Trump. I mean, who else could it belong to? He's been in power for 3 years. It will belong to him. So he will be running against something he has helped spread in a way, in a kind of negative way.
Yeah, that's, well, we're saying we'll reopen in the fall because that's what they're projecting, right? So we're just going, I suppose you need something to look forward to, right?
I hope so too. No, I hope so too. But I just think we're not being smart about it, right? To get back to my point about manufacturing. So,
Oh yeah, no, I agree with you. I don't think we're being smart about it at all. Well, I think as a country we're not being smart about it. I think as far as a state is concerned, I think we're doing a pretty good job, to be honest. The we're in that clique with New York and Jersey and all that. Even though Cuomo refuses to mention PA every time he starts mentioning states, he never ever mentions Pennsylvania. Right? He'll mention Jersey, Connecticut. He won't mention Pennsylvania at all. So even there, even in that group, we're like the redheaded stepchild. Uh, we always are. He could even just say Philly, and I'd take that, right? Even if he just mentioned like states and Philly, I'd be like, well, all right, it's Philly, but still, you're still getting it's still your cousin, even if you don't like the cousin, it's still your cousin, right? But I think overall they're doing a really good job. My biggest concern with this whole thing, which is the concern I think everybody has, is whenever you get like that asshole down in Georgia, the what do we call it? The painted piece of shit that Florida is. I think that was my term yesterday, Lou.
With the paint peeling.
Yeah, with the paint peeling now. Yeah, we are United States. We're not islands. We're not 50 separate islands with no cross contamination. We could be as responsible as a nun. And it's not going to matter if you got some dipshit who decides, the neighboring state, that he's just going to not really care about anybody and go ahead and open it because he thinks he's going to get reelected.
On that vein, you talk about the protesters. I don't know if you've seen two stories I heard today. Kentucky had those protests against their Governor Bashir about a week ago, maybe a little more. All of a sudden, they're starting to spike again.
Yeah.
Okay. And from the Wisconsin election last week, 7 people, they've already tested 7 people positive in Milwaukee that they suspect got it from waiting in line to vote.
And waiting in line in one of those, what was it, 8 polling places in all of Milwaukee?
Yeah. Yep.
The fuck.
that's so sad. That's so
It's
sad.
ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, our protests, looked like a fairly small deal. Like, notice how they film these things. When you see these things on TV, look at how they film them. They do tight crop angle shots to make the crowd go from one end of the frame to the other. But it's just like the trick you play with your phone cam, right? You move in to fill the frame because there's only a couple hundred people there in the first place.
Right. Yeah, but they have to sell it, so they make it look like there's a couple thousand.
Millions of others stayed home.
Yeah.
It's just like the Tea Party and the healthcare protests during the Obamacare run in 2009, 2010. So it's not a real movement. They're going to see, like Georgia and Florida and any place that opens without good precautions, they're going to see new spikes. That's when I'm going to be interested to see what happens with Trump's support.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Yeah. And what I'm not seeing, and, maybe it's me, or I'm obviously not clicking on the right things whenever all these trackers are tracking me. Because last time, remember I was telling you about how I didn't say anything about Biden. Now I can't get away from him, right? I haven't seen any of these governors what their numbers are, what their political numbers are. I haven't seen any. I know I've seen what Cuomo's are, but that's because it's New York and this guy's on national TV every day. So, there's going to be a national interest for him. And his numbers aren't as good as I thought they'd be, to be honest. But what about these other guys? What about Rick Scott's? What are his going to be? What the jackass in Georgia? What are his numbers now? And then we'll take your scenario, Di. What are his numbers going to be whenever this whole thing hits again? We're looking at Trump's numbers, how they're going to tank. How are these governors' numbers going to tank?
Well, Scott's a senator now, and there's some other fool in Florida.
Oh yeah, there is. Yeah, there is.
DeSantis.
DeSantis. Yeah, that's him.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
He looks like the Robin, like they're like a Batman and Robin team, right? Rick Scott and DeSantis. They look like
You
the
see him walking
Batman
up this.
and
You see him walking
Robin.
up the side of a building on a rope.
But,
I'm
but
sorry, it was on a
like,
string. It wasn't even a rope.
but like in some alternate universe where everything is bad, Batman is a bad hero. You know, like,
Bizarro world.
but
But I'm curious to see what are going to be.
what is Kemp going to do when he reopens Georgia and people don't want to fly into Hartsfield and people don't want, my cousin works at that airport, by the way, for Delta. And so he's been laid off. He works in the, like on the machinery that moves the airport around. So the tugs that tug your luggage out and so on and so forth. And there's nobody flying. So Kemp reopens Georgia, right? And people don't want to fly Delta because they don't want to fly through Georgia.
Yeah. Now what do you do? Okay, we're all open and everybody goes back to work. So now all these people are on a payroll. You can't pay them because you have no income.
I would say the people also that, they'll never come flat out and admit this is, they want all these people back to work. The people that have the means that don't have to go out, I still think are not going right away.
Oh, that's true. That was my point before. When you reopen the store and the nail salon and the restaurants or whatever, you're deciding that all of the low wage service workers are expendable. But if you're lucky enough to be a telecommuter or be able to work from home or, have your company remote or whatever, you won't have to go into that fray if you don't want to, right? So now we're deciding like which tiers of society are expendable to reopen. I mean, it's very elitist. And when that's exposed in its rawness throughout the next 6 months, I think that these guys who push to reopen early will own any failure that might result.
I sure hope they're going to try like crazy to pass it off onto something else.
We got to be making those clips now, right? Like Lou said, these ads should write themselves, man. Capture these clips.
You need Trump to lose by a big enough margin to drag McConnell and a few others down with him.
From a message that we got on Twitter from Dark Sage 9117. The problem is, even if people dislike governors like Kemp, Baker, or Newsom, there's TGI. They are still going to vote for him regardless. Many of the states today have become far more partisan than in recent decades. Take Pennsylvania, for example. No matter no matter if he hate how Wolf has done, most of the people here will still vote for him because of how partisan we are on the state level.
I don't know about that. I mean, in the South, I think that's true. In states that have never gone to the other side, right? Their governor has been the same for 50 or 60 years. Maybe that's true, but and that's a good point. But in Pennsylvania, we've gone back and forth. Our previous governor was Governor Corbett, right?
Who was Republican as could be, who was Democrat.
And before him, Tom Ridge.
Who was Republican.
And Ridge had an appointed successor because he went to do the Homeland Security thing. But it's been a back and forth thing in Pennsylvania my entire lifetime. So some states, and Michigan's the same way. The Rust Belt, Ohio is the great exception, right? But Ohio and Indiana, I think, are the great exceptions. But most have gone back and forth a little bit.
The only thing Pennsylvania was really blue about was the federal level. It was really it. The state and local levels, we kind of swing, both ways, for lack of a very poor metaphor. But
that's a happier metaphor.
But yeah, it was not intended the way it came out. Trust me. But yeah, we're not really a state that is very left leaning or right leaning, other than anything below the federal level. So I don't.
Our legislature has been Republican
for the most part.
Because that's been gerrymandered for a long time.
Yeah, and that's a great point. So I mean, but I think these things are going to change. I really do. I think a lot of them are going to change. Maybe in Nicholas, like for the younger generation, right? Maybe in their lifetime, but
Yeah,
not
maybe.
necessarily, quickly for us. And maybe though, maybe quicker than we think. I mean, this could be a turning point. We could look back in 5 years and say, oh, that was the moment.
Yeah.
People realized they were vulnerable and they did something about it. It all depends on how they manage the reopening, right? And my big
Yep.
thing with the mayor of Dystopia was you're up there protesting in what is really an AstroTurf movement set about by Betsy DeVos and her family. That's who's funding this, just like the Tea Party. And what happens if we reopen and people are sick or businesses fail, like Lou pointed out, because people don't want to come back and get sick and they believe, like if I go to that restaurant, I'm going to get sick, or it actually happens. People go to restaurants
Right.
and they get sick, right? Then these guys are going to own that for a long, long time. It's going to be remembered in that way. They protested to open, we opened, and a bunch of people got sick.
Yeah. I think that for the most part too, and I think we already said it, people are going to go back to these things very slowly, right? A lot of people are going to be very, very scared, really, about having to go back to as much as much as they want to. Trust me when I tell you, I want some Mexican. All right. I mean, we got a Mexican place here in town that's phenomenal, and it's killing me that I can't get there.
I love it too.
And the family, they're great people. The family's super. There's not a downside to this restaurant. The prices are good. The atmosphere is fantastic. There's nothing negative about this place. But I tell you, whenever this thing lifts, as much as I like these folks, and as much as I enjoy it, and I think it's going to be clean and everything else. It's not a reflection of anything. It's not the restaurant as much as I'm worried about the other people that are going to be in it. And I'm not. I'm not. I'll do takeout. I'll grab takeout because oh my god, I can't get enough of their food. But I'm going to be pretty nervous about it.
Yeah, so I have one of those restaurants down in Butler, right? And every time I go down to Butler, if they're open, I call and I'm like, "You guys doing some takeout?" And they're like, "Sure." And it's my favorite Mexican restaurant down that way. And nothing bad has happened, but I don't know that I'll go sit in a restaurant for a long time until we know what's going on and people can get tested and we can get reliable results quickly.
It's something I was just thinking about. You're talking about coming back to restaurants. Friends of ours, it was probably the last weekend the restaurants were open. And how going to your restaurant, both of Iron Bridge Inn.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever gone there on Saturday night at 6 o'clock and walked right in?
No, I wouldn't
Never.
even think of it.
We did on
Never.
March 14th, because that's when it was already coming into view that we should be starting to social distance and this and that. 5:30 or 6 o'clock, we went up. It was our friends of ours, her birthday. And I have that Yelp app where you could get in line on the way. So I get on the app and it says walk right in. I said, there's something the matter at this damn thing. It can't be right. I've never gone there without a wait. Sure enough, we got there, walked in, right to the table. And I would say it was at 60 to 70% capacity.
Really?
With no waiting.
Wow.
And that is very unusual for that restaurant. I mean, for years you've waited.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder what a place like Permane Brothers is going to be like, because Permane's is packed. What do you call it? Dr. Diep in Grove City. That thing's packed, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. You know, you get there, especially after the outlets close, that place is hopping. It really pretty much doesn't matter what day of the week it is.
Their owner was on the Pittsburgh Tech Council Zoom meeting today, right? So every day at noon, the Pittsburgh Tech Council, and this is a little plug for them, if you're a Pittsburgher, they have something called business as usual, right? And they bring all these local business leaders and politicians and people who can inform us about like what will be happening next in the crisis. Really great series. In any case, they had the owner of Primanti's on today, and he was talking about how rough it is, right? And they're trying to bring back some responsible takeout and whatnot, but the guidelines aren't clear. They're not sure. They're having this debate about how they open, you know, for full capacity with only maybe 20% of the people coming in. So I'm wondering if they're doing takeout up here. I didn't get a clear answer during the call today, but maybe on the follow-ups there will be some information, because that is the first place I thought of. It's funny that you mentioned it during this podcast, because that was the subject earlier today, right? How do these restaurants do it responsibly? These rural restaurants that have a big following, like Primanti's up here or Timber Creek Tap Room up here, how do they how do they work it out, right? How do the outlets work it out? How do they keep people in and out of stores, right? That's an outlet mall. How do they keep people in and out of stores responsibly and protect their own staff? That's going to be interesting if we don't have testing. If we have testing, some of this goes away. Some of it.
Yeah, and what did you say? The three biggest things that they need are testing,
PPE for the people who are working in these restaurants, like masks and whatnot, and to keep them healthy and safe, you know, as they encounter all these customers. For shop, you know, people who work in shops and have to deal with customers, PPE testing, and some responsible way to track who has it and who's been exposed, and to test quickly, to get results quickly, right? Right now, you go get a test and you get results back 3 days later. So maybe you infect 15 more people. If I can get results in 30 minutes,
yeah, what a big deal that is. Well, how are they doing this? These drive-through ones? Are they just testing them and telling them to go park like they do at Dunkin' Donuts whenever they don't have your thing ready?
No, here's the deal. You get referred by your PCP, your primary care physician, and you go sit in a line in your car for 2 or 3 hours. And then they, just like you see on TV, they walk up to your car and they stick the swab up your nose, way back into your sinus. They pull some sample out, and then you go home, and 3 days later, you might get the results.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So many people in New York, like as they started these procedures, even because they're standing in lines, right? They're not sitting in their cars necessarily in New York. But so many people went home and then died before they got the results. And they were finding people dead in their apartments all over New York City. And that there are quicker tests. There are new tests coming out, but they're not widely distributed. Right? There's not a public information system where I can find out how many people in Slippery Rock are infected. There is now, but the data is running 2 or 3 days behind. There's no way I can find out like 16 people who went to such and such a restaurant in, like Grove City are infected, or Butler are infected, or you know what I mean? Or Newcastle or Mercer or any of those surrounding counties, right? And in our little corner of Dystopiaville, it's no restaurants are open. Nothing is open. So it's the grocery store, right? How do I find out how many people were infected at the grocery store?
Yeah. I don't know, lots. There are lots, right? Well, think about it. Where's the biggest congregations of people? Grocery stores, restaurants, bars, right?
This might be one for tomorrow, but we need to talk someday and kind of take apart. I wrote my whole dissertation about surveillance and tracking and privacy, right? And what we're really talking about, if we reopen with some kind of real-time information, is tracking people who've tested positive, and then somehow anonymously displaying that information, which means everybody's subjecting themselves to a certain level of surveillance for public health. And how is that going to go down? I mean, the same people who are protesting to reopen will be the first people who say they don't want to be tracked and they don't want to participate in those efforts.
So here's the thing with the surveillance thing though. What's the I'm sorry, I can't think of the name of it, but it's one of those where they're pinging each other's phones, right? It's a
The Stingray?
it's a low latency Bluetooth connection, and you can just be walking past somebody.
Oh, near field communication. NFC.
Well, it's an NFC thing, but if what happens is, now here's the idea: you're walking down the street. I don't know. You're walking down the street in Dystopiaville, and you pass somebody, and your phone gives you a notification that person, well, technically it'd be that phone, but that person has been in contact with somebody who may have tested positive for COVID-19. Okay. So you think about it in theory and on the surface, it seems like a pretty good idea. Now, I'm not talking about privacy issues or surveillance or anything you're talking about. I'm not getting in that deep into the woods. I'm just looking at this from a practicality point of view. That is a great idea if you're talking about one situation or a small group of people, 10 people, or even 100 people. But whenever you're talking now about 100,000 people, that doesn't work anymore because, as we all know, we all have 7 degrees of separation, right? No matter who you are, there's 7. It's the Kevin Bacon thing, right? So if I'm doing this and I'm doing this over an enormous number of people, just say the states along the East Coast, just those states, or, the 3 states along the West Coast, doesn't really matter. Your numbers are now meaningless because there's too much. Well, I walked past Lou and Lou's been in contact with somebody who may have been infected. And then that person goes in his contact with somebody, and then I'm in contact with that person while I'm getting hit twice. I'm showing that I've been in contact with 2 people when in actuality that's only 1, and that's just between 4 or 5 of us. Do that over 100,000 or 200,000 or 500,000.
Everybody will be getting pinged constantly, and then you'll disregard it.
That number is so completely inflated that it's worthless. It's literally a worthless number at that point.
That's a great point. Boy, that's a subject for a whole nother, like, how do you do it? And how
that's how us engineers do things. That's.
Yeah, I mean, and so right now on the tests that we have, this is the other thing. This is the last thing, and I know we're going over time. Some of these tests have an 80% false positive rate.
80%.
80% false positive.
False positives.
Yeah, and that was the problem with the first set of tests from the CDC. Now, we're not using those consciously anymore, but there still are some in circulation. Some groups are still using those tests that were deemed, ineffective, and because they don't have any tests at all. So it's no test or this test with an 80% false positive rate. That's not helpful either, especially in the scenario you described. Because now we have people getting tested and retested who are getting false positives who are pinging twice on the same people. Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of problems with just sort of tracking the data in that way.
That's the problem whenever you're having people track this data who don't know, number one, how to administer it, number two, how to dissect it.
Right. So, I mean, we don't have a reliable information system. We don't have the PPE. We don't have a distribution network. That was probably my third thing.
That was your third, yeah.
And we don't have any way to determine where is safe and where is not safe right now. So we need good technology. We need good manufacturing, and we need like smart solutions, none of which I see leadership coming up with. This is the gap for the companies. The first people to figure this out are the people who are going to be billionaires in the next wave of tech. It's going to be med tech, not ed tech, med tech.
The part that kills me is we had 2 months. We honest to God, I felt like I was in college, you know, and I don't have to worry about my, I don't have to worry about my midterms or my finals for another 2 weeks. So I'm not going to even bother to look at it. You know, it's the night before. I'm going to cram and see if I can't get a passing grade.
I do want to acknowledge the good discussion we have on the Zoom group chat, though. People are trying to figure out which states are going to go which way. I think it's really early to make that determination because the story isn't written yet. The story is so dramatic, it's hard to tell which way some of these swing states are going to go. And Georgia may transform. In the discussion, there's this notion that Georgia and Texas will not go blue this time around. But I think Georgia's up in the air because of the way Kemp is mismanaging this pandemic. So who knows how that will go in Texas as well.
I kind of get the feeling that this pandemic is going to change the rules for a lot of things. We had talked about it earlier, how it's going to change so many things. I wonder how this is going to, or are people so ingrained, which I think was a lot of the discussion, that people are so ingrained in their how many times, Lou, have you and I said that if Jesus Christ ran as a Democrat, he would lose Mayberry. He would lose this part of the the state,
No doubt.
In dystopia.
And dystopia, right? Yeah.
He would lose dystopia too. Dystopiaville.
Yeah. So I really wonder how much all this is going to change, or if Dark Sage was right, that it's so partisan that it's really not going to matter. Thank you, by the way, Dark Sage, for your conversation with us today. It was fantastic. Thank you so much. With that being said, and please come back. Please come back. We're here all week. Just look below. You'll see whenever we're here. To everybody watching and listening and everything else, thank you so very much. We were supposed to be a quartet today. Actually, we were supposed to be a 5-piece today, believe it or not, because Master Grant was supposed to join us. Unfortunately, he had to work, and then at the last second, Frank, the other half of the Frank and Patsy podcast, Frank bailed. So it's just us chickens today. But you guys were great as always. Great as always.
Thanks for inviting us.
Well, you're always here. You know, you're part of this thing. So
I'm becoming a regular more.
Well, you should. I told you keep us all in line. Everybody watching, don't forget the Frank and Patsy. The recording of the audio podcast will be tomorrow right here. Live video, the whole 9 yards. We just download the video, convert it to an MP3, and then put it up on our pod server. So be back here. It'll be at 4:00 tomorrow. Wednesdays at 4:00. So obviously, you guys are part of the clique. So if you guys want in, please just jump on and we'll have this conversation going. And we'll probably come up with something new, because God knows what the hell tomorrow is going to bring. It's like every 20 minutes, everything changes. But until then, by the way, and if you guys like what you see and what you hear, please, if you can, please support us on Patreon. You can do it for as little as $1 a month. And trust me, the way this thing's going, we need beer money. Oh my God, do we need beer money? So thank you
rations. Beer rations.
So until then, everybody, we'll see you tomorrow. Goodbye. Good luck, and God bless. We'll see you guys tomorrow.